when your plugin goes, baller style, you'll be able to buy a couple houses.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Welcome to the Matt Report, the #1 WordPress business podcast. This isn't geek speak. It's about the journey of success and failure as a WordPress entrepreneur. Get ready. You're just an episode away from your next aha experience or big idea. And now your host, Matt.
All right, everybody. Got a great episode coming up with Brad Touesnard, the guy who started Delicious Brains, who put out a couple plugins as we're going to learn about more recently. The most popular one is a WP Migrate Pro plugin, tremendous plugin to migrate your WordPress database, right, from one host to another. Something that is such a simple, easy idea, but something that's not very easy to solve, and he does this effortlessly. With this plugin. We're going to learn about that. More importantly, we're going to learn about the failure that he went through to kind of come about this new idea and what that means. We're going to talk about things like why it's important to have good advisors. We're going to talk about how it's an interesting thing that folks are now kind of creating some investment opportunities in developers like Brad. And we're going to learn who invested in Brad later on in the show. And what that all meant to him and his business. MattReport.com, of course, MattReport.com/subscribe. Join my mailing list. The only thing I really ask for is, hey, if you're listening to this on iTunes, can you give me a 5-star rating? That would be tremendous. So let's get started with the show. Hope you enjoy it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Matt Report. Back with a good friend of mine, Brad Touesnard. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is our second round, full disclosure, because, as everyone knows, the epic fail of my MacBook and my epic fail to back up my files in an efficient manner has lost our previous episode. But the good thing is we get to pick up where our hero left off and see where he's been since the last few months ago. Before we get into all the awesome stuff that you do with creating your premium plugin, Brad, tell folks who you are and what you do.
Sure. I guess I would say I'm an entrepreneur now because I don't write as much code as I used to, but I used to be a web developer and worked mostly with WordPress. And I started a new business this year, in January this year, called Delicious Brains. And I just set that up to sell a new plugin called WP Migrate DB Pro, which allows developers to migrate their database from one WordPress install to another from the dashboard really easily. So it takes away a lot of the pain involved in that process.
Was it that pain that led you to kind of develop this idea, or was this something you just kind of drew up on a whiteboard one day?
No, so I built the free plugin. So there's a free version of this in 2009 to scratch my own itch. It was, I was just tired of migrating sites and dealing with all the crap that you have to deal with when you do that. So I wrote this pretty simple plugin that does all the find and replaces. It takes into account serialized data, which is one of the big pain points. And just gives you a data dump, an SQL file that you can import using PHP MyAdmin.
Nice. And
that's the free version. It's still out there. It's on WordPress.org repo, and so that's like my main sales funnel. That's like where most people discover the pro version, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's probably the same for most people that have a free version of their plugin. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Let's get into the marketing side of things. How did you become? How did you get to your premium side? What clicked to say, you know what, it's time to charge for this plugin?
Yeah. So I started with the free plugin, like I said, in 2009, and it kind of was on autopilot. It wasn't doing. I wasn't really paying attention. I just put it out there, hoped other people would like it. But it kind of developed a following over time, just kind of organically, people caught wind of it. And then I started to realize that people really loved it. I just started getting some feedback. And so then I decided to put a survey in the sidebar of the free plugin to ask, would you be willing to pay for these extra features? And I listed the features. And then if they said yes, then it would drop down and then ask them how much they would be willing to pay. And then, they would submit that. And I collected, an email address, of course. I collected that as well. And I collected about 200 email addresses from that form alone. And everyone was super pumped about a pro version. And I think the average price was $29 that people were willing to pay. That's what they said, anyway. And so that was my initial list, about 200.
Nice.
200 emails. Yeah.
A couple questions on that front. Were you able, just so folks who maybe aren't used to the WordPress repo yet, especially developing and uploading to the WordPress repo, were you able to put those fields in there right in the plugin, or did you have to kind of shoot them off to another site? In other words, did WordPress allow you to put that collection in there?
Yeah, so the form was embedded in the plugin, like the HTML for the form, but when you post it, it would post to my site, and I would collect the data. So that's pretty much how that worked.
Awesome.
Which I'm pretty sure is well within the guidelines of the WordPress.org repo.
Yes. Let's talk about that pricing structure. You say most folks were willing to pay that $29, $30 on average. I think when we spoke last time, you had a pretty good size range of what people were willing to pay. How did you narrow down, and what were your lows and what were the low and the highs in that range?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion going on about sustainability and pricing right now in the WordPress world.
Where I was going.
Yeah. And I think I actually failed on this one. I guess I did and I didn't. Like when you first launch something, you're kind of timid about overpricing it, right? Because you want people to at least try it and get it, right? But I think I did set it quite low. I set the personal edition at $19, and the business, I believe, I had set to $39, and then Pro at $99. I've since upped my pricing on the personal by $20 and the business by $10, and I've left the developer edition alone for now. But the plan is to add some new features, and at that time, I'm going to restructure the pricing and make it more sustainable. Yeah, there's a lot of people writing about how you can make your pricing sustainable, and do the calculations, do the math. Right now, a developer license is $99, and it's a yearly subscription. Mm-hmm. So that's $5 a month. Right. Which is extremely low. So if someone takes an hour of our time for support, for instance, that's pretty much, profits are gone pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to know how to, make your pricing sustainable, I think. What I did, I looked at Gravity forms, and I think at this point, Carl's probably going to kill me for saying this, but I think their pricing could be increased. The value that Gravity forms provides, I think, is well in excess of what you pay for it. So
I don't think he's going to kill you. I think he's going to give you a high five, because I'd imagine he'd be the one, if out of anybody, he would be the one that would probably raise a premium plugin to a ridiculous amount of money that we've never seen before. I don't mean ridiculous in like he shouldn't charge for it, but I think it'll be that culture shock of folks, just like we've seen with WooCommerce and Woo themes in this recent last few weeks since you and I last talked. Before we talk about that or get into that, when you saw your pricing, was it just you just averaged what the people sent to you, and they just on average was $30 or $29, and you just said, okay, I'm going to go with that?
Yeah, so the $29, I kind of just used that as a reference point, kind of, because some people said, $100, some people said $200, other people said $1, something ridiculous. So yeah, they're all over the map. I think consumers are a bit confused because you have the Apple App Store prices, right? So they're looking at that software and they think, why is another software 99 cents? And so I think that is making things a lot more confusing.
Yeah, and those people are also looking at us going, why can't you build me a site for 99 cents? Why can't you build me Facebook for 99 cents? It's not going to take that long. And you're right. I think that on the scale of $99 a month, let's say if you were, $99 a year, I think if you were like a SEO Moz or now Moz or like a Raven Tools where you just had a critical mass of people, that $99 a year is a good chunk of change. But when you're folks like you and I and maybe have only a few thousand customers, it doesn't scale or it's not sustainable over the course of time, add more features. And more recently, I've seen you ask to bring another developer onto the team.
Yeah.
How's that going? And why are you adding somebody else to inform the audience?
Right. So I spend a lot of my time right now reviewing code commits, and just providing feedback to the developer I have working full-time, Chris Apri. And because I think, code review is super important, especially with a plugin like this. I think every line of code should be scrutinized with a plugin like this. So I want to free up my time to work on other things and to focus on strategy and marketing and other things. So if I can hire someone to take that small role of reviewing commits and suggesting improvements to the code here and there and that kind of thing, and it's a small chunk of their time out of their week. I'm only asking for 5 hours a week, so about 90 minutes a day, 4 days a week. That's what I'm looking for. So yeah, just trying to free up my time. I watched a MicroConf talk about how founders have to free up their time, and it was like I just started as I was listening to the talk. I was thinking, oh geez, well I could do that. Oh, I could free up that time. Like you just start picking out all these things that you could totally offload on other people that you don't need to be doing yourself. So I think that's a common problem for founders, that you start focusing on the business so much and you're just doing the same tasks you've been doing. You don't have time to stop and think, should I really be doing this task?
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff I want to get into after those remarks. The first one is, I will tackle this one first. The MicroConf stuff, I don't want to put them in, as I follow Mike and Rob, their show, their podcast, and all that stuff. I've never been to a MicroConf. We'll love to get to one. But what I find in that space, in a lot of these internet marketing / internet strategy podcasts, is just go and hire somebody, pennies on the dollar, free up your time. Outsource a developer, interview a whole bunch from all over the world and just pick the one that, can maybe solve a few preliminary questions. Can that still be the case with WordPress development? Should WordPress developers be held to a higher standard when you're outsourcing in that scenario? And I say this only because I feel like these types of shows kind of put WordPress in a small light. Like, it's just WordPress. Yeah, you can hire anybody.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
No, I don't. I think you have to be careful about who you hire. I mean, you don't want... I've gotten quite a few applications now, and I'm looking for someone with a similar level of coding experience with WordPress specifically as I have. I get some requests from people that say, "Oh, I'm really good at PHP. I've got this many years PHP." Well, yeah, but you have to learn the framework that is WordPress, and there's a bit of a learning curve, and what you end up seeing from people that aren't used to doing it the WordPress way is they do it the WordPress way. And I was just reading something an hour ago. Someone was saying, oh, it was an article, and one of the big faux pas of plugin development is using curl directly rather than using the WordPress API functions that wrap around curl, right? And so if you don't know that, if that's something, you would just use curl directly. So that's just a small example of the kind of stuff that you need to know and get up to speed on if you're going to get into WordPress development.
Yeah. Now, the interesting dilemma comes in when the programmer / developer / WordPress guy becomes the founder. What is it like for you having the background of development, WordPress development, valuing your hourly rate and time, and then transitioning to that founder and maybe speaking to somebody who's a really good programmer just like you, and then he or she says, well, I'm $150 an hour. How do you pull yourself out of that? Well, I remember what it was like to be a developer and say, my time is worth X. Yeah. Now I'm a founder and I have to make the business work. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's really what you can afford to pay, I guess. Like if someone says $150 an hour and you can't afford, more than 100, then you can't afford that person, right? Mm-hmm. Like, but maybe you should try hiring them for less hours. Maybe the hours you think that it's going to take them, maybe because they're more experienced and better, maybe it'll take them less time to do things. So you have to balance that as well. Less experienced developers will take longer in general, or they'll make more mistakes, which end up taking longer anyway. So, I think it's a balance. Like, if someone's truly worth $150 an hour, then you should be able to get that out of them, right? So,
are you using any kind of hiring process, systems, tactics that maybe you were exposed to when you were applying for development jobs? Are you kind of flipping the script a little bit? Or are you just talking to people and seeing how they interact?
Right. I was kind of lucky in my freelancing because I used to work at an agency, and most of my work just came from connections that I had at that agency. Mm-hmm. So I didn't do a whole lot of marketing or seeking out work. It just kind of came to me. Mm-hmm. But I think, so one of the techniques I'm using right now is something that was mentioned in the MicroConf talk that I saw, and it's making them submit a form with specific pointed questions that you want to know the answers to, rather than just saying, here's a job, submit your resume. Resume should be a field in the form that they enter a URL into. Mm-hmm. And if they say there's no upload form, then you know that candidate is not for you. If there's no upload field for their resume, sometimes you get that.
That's a good little trick.
If they can't solve the problem of getting you their resume in a URL, then they're probably not the right candidate for the job.
And I'm so glad you said that, because what I was going to lead into was, how could a non-technical founder ask to hire a developer, but then also vet them a little bit more without kind of that technical knowledge? That's a great little trick. You don't have to be technical to do that. You just have to be competent and just say, where's the upload button? And do little things.
Another
like
couple things is, make sure you ask for their GitHub account. Make sure you ask, if it's WordPress, make sure you ask for their WordPress profile. If those are things that you go to their profile and it's empty, they may still be a great developer and just haven't shared their code yet. But obviously, if they have a nice full profile, lots of activity on GitHub, it's going to, it's definitely a plus one, right? In those two columns.
Tremendous. When we talked last time, you shared a little story about launching the product on day one. You were able to collect those 200 emails. How did the launch go? And sort of give folks sort of a quick how-to on how you did that launch to become so successful.
Yeah, so I managed to collect an additional 100 emails through, I think it was just Twitter campaigning. So like when WordCamps were on, I made a landing page for WordCamp Miami and collected a few email addresses that way. And after I knew that I was building the plugin, I replaced the form in the plugin with just a subscribe form to get people to, people that were interested when the plugin launched to submit their email. And so anyway, I ended up with 300 when I launched, and I really spent a lot of time crafting the email like to these people, and just to make it look like it was from me, because they, if they're using the free plugin, I made it very clear that I was the developer. I had a headshot and in the sidebar and stuff, that it was, developed and maintained by me. And so, the email had the same thing. It had a little headshot of me and my name and, developer of WP Migrate DB. So it was kind of like tying the email together with what they've already seen in the free plugin to make it obvious that these two things are connected. And then just making the email very short, have one URL in it, and very concise and personal. So I like to start emails with just a heads up, or things that you would say to someone if I was just emailing you on a whim, like check out this article or whatever, that kind of thing. I like to keep emails like that, keep them really short. And that's how I do my email marketing. I don't spend a ton of time laying out an email with images and how many times, like if you're sending an email to me, how often is it that you're going to embed images and like design the email, right? Never.
You did spend a lot of time though kind of crafting the message in the beginning.
I did.
Right? I think when we spoke last time, it was like over an hour, right? To craft that first few sentences that you sent out just to get it right. So that's super important too, that you do spend time on the message, but to heck with all the other crap around it, because you just want them to see the message.
Yeah. I don't know though, like I probably would have been better off just writing it and just keeping the first thing I wrote, because it's one of those things, like the more you tweak it, the less authentic it becomes, Yeah. So I ended up probably going full circle and ended up with something that was very close to what I had the first draft.
You bring up two interesting things. You bring up the entrepreneur's mindset of like either not being able to let something go. Like as much as we know we have to ship something, we don't do it because we're always like trying to refine it and get better at it. That's one thing. The second thing is, I think that when you have a product like yours, or at least in the version that it is in now, it's really meant for folks like you and I, because we know what it's like to migrate websites, right? So the person who just installs WordPress isn't probably looking for WP Migrate right now. Eventually they will. But right now it's like folks like you and me. So how do we market to people like you and I? We do these tactics, right? But then at the same time, folks like you and I are also learning these tactics. Right. And when we see these emails, we're like, I know what he's doing. He is trying to market to me. So it's always just an interesting thing when you kind of like follow the folks at MicroConf and follow these internet strategists, and then you go and do it to yourself, but you're marketing to yourself at the same time. It's like this weird matrix thing going on. And now I'm in the same boat as you. I'm just like, I'm not going to spend time doing it anymore. If you want my stuff, you'll click it, right? And if you don't want it, you'll just unsubscribe. So just interesting dilemma.
Yeah. I've had a pretty good reply rate with my emails, like people just replying saying, oh, thanks. Like they really believe that I only sent this to them, and that's the way I want it to come off, even though it isn't. But if they reply, that's great. I'll reply back to them, and then it's a conversation. That's why I make the emails personal and directly to them, so that, it starts a conversation, and maybe I can learn something. Maybe something is irking them about the plugin, or maybe something we're doing great that that's valuable to know. So
Are you using MailChimp to send out your emails, or do you use another platform?
No, I'm using Campaign Monitor.
Oh, cool.
One thing I should mention I spent a ton of time, probably too much, is that when I first launched, I went through all the email addresses I had, and I tried to find out what the people's first name was so that I could say in my email, hi, first name. I thought that was really important and that I got their first name. Because if you just say hi, and it's automatically less personal and more generic. So I spent quite a bit of time. I was doing crazy things like looking up the email addresses, Gravatar, like I was MD5ing it to get their Gravatar profile.
That's crazy.
And I was just Google searching and just trying to find, what their first name was so that I could really speak to them directly. So I think that's important.
Yeah, that's a cool little insight to that. Let's talk about the business of an entrepreneur and why it's a little bit different than maybe what you're used to. When we spoke last time, you had mentioned that sort of the founders of Woo and the founders of Gravity kind of helped you start this little bit of seed funding, a little bit of backing. I thought it was an amazing story. How has this how have these angel investors helped you?
Oh yeah, they have a ton of experience, in the WordPress space specifically, but just in general as well, just doing business. I mean, Woo Themes is a huge business, and 80 Pioneer of Woo Themes, one of the founders of Woo Themes, is one of the guys, and Carl Hancock at Rocket Genius / Gravity Forums was the other guy who was helping me out. And they were just providing, whenever I'd have a question or was unsure of the decision I was making, I would just send them an email, and they were phenomenal to get back to me, like instantly get back to me. So I think that's really important if you're an entrepreneur working in isolation by yourself, to have someone, they don't have to be an investor. They don't have to be, they just need to be an advisor, just someone that you respect and can, look to for advice. And so, I think that was huge for me, because there's so much doubt when you're launching something new. So to have someone to bounce things off of is essential. You can't do without it, really. You would go crazy.
Yeah. No, I believe you. This is an interesting space. This is something that I hope to see more of in the WordPress ecosystem, are folks like you who have a great idea, who want to seek out advisors or seek out some kind of seed funding, angel funding for their project. What was that like? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? How did that all go down?
Yeah, good question. So I was talking to Brian Castle on just Instant Messenger one day, and he mentioned that 80 was always interested in talking about projects with, first-time entrepreneurs. And I went to his site, and he had this page that was specifically geared to that. And so I, submitted the form, kind of half thinking I'd never hear from him because he's a busy guy, right? But he was interested to hear more about my idea, and so from there, he just started advising me, and then he brought Carl into the mix because he was interested as well. And I should say, I'm talking about WP App Store at this point. This is when I was first launching WP App Store. And that was the idea that I had. And so that, we went through that, and and we kept going. I built a prototype in a couple months, I guess, and they were really pumped about it at that point, and they're like, okay, let's get in on this. So they became investors at that point. And we started refining it and getting it ready to launch and getting all the vendors on board with their products and stuff.
That was a chapter that we mistakenly skipped in the beginning. Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
When we spoke last time about that, there was a story of kind of failure to launch it in the way you had hoped. There were some challenges in that. Let's talk about what it was as a product and the challenge that it was to really get it out there.
Right. So WP App Store is basically a collection of products from different vendors. So you've got Woo Themes, you've got Press 75, a bunch of different theme companies in there, and also different plugin companies selling their plugins. That was the idea, bring them all together. But the other big part of this was to get the purchasing and the browsing of the store and everything built right into WordPress, right into the dashboard, just like iTunes, right? We're just basically following their model. So the problem there, though, is that they have to install a plugin, the WP App Store plugin, to browse the store and to buy a plugin. So you can imagine, say you want to buy a plugin, to have to install another plugin, even though it's free, just the hassle of having to install it is a huge barrier to purchasing. And what we found is that people didn't even understand that. They didn't really understand why they had to do that. So that was a huge thing. So when we launched, we didn't even have a product catalog at all on the public website. So you couldn't do anything without downloading and installing a plugin. And that was sort of by design, because we wanted people to install the plugin. So if they were interested and curious, we wanted them to have to install a plugin to go any further. And I think that did encourage more people to install it. But they still didn't really see the value in purchasing directly from us. They decided most people were fine just going right to the vendor, and installing or buying and installing from there. Yeah. So the value of one click buy and install just wasn't enough for people. They were happier just to go directly to the vendor and cut out the middleman. So I think that's a big problem with marketplaces that are selling products that are not exclusive. So products that are also available elsewhere, directly from a vendor. People they don't understand why they would go through a middleman if they didn't have to, right?
What were there any visions of the App Store, if you will, to offer discounts for using the plugin? Membership pricing where you could get unlimited plugins every month, that kind of thing. Right. Was that just not advertised well enough or marketed well enough, or was it just the barrier of saying, hey, look, I got to install this and I might as well just go directly?
Right. A lot of the people, so I did a bit of customer development, just talking to potential customers, and a lot of people said that either they already bought the plugin, they already have an unlimited license for the plugins that are available, or they prefer to buy directly from the vendor rather than through a middleman. I think there was a bit of a failure on my part to not communicate well the benefits of WP App Store. For instance, having all your licenses and all your purchases in one place rather than having to go to each vendor to get them. I think that probably could have been communicated a little bit better. And also the fact that if you bought through WP App Store, you did get an account at the vendor. So there was really no difference. It was just an added benefit if you bought through WP App Store. That probably could have been communicated a bit better. But I don't think those would have been huge. I don't think they would have had a huge impact. I don't think they would have made a huge difference. I think the other problems were far outweigh that small, tweak.
So you kind of put this idea together. Did you formulate like business plan and sliders and projected income, and then went to these guys and said, look at what we can grow this business to? Or did you just throw out the idea and say, will you help us?
Sorry, to who?
To your advisors.
Oh, right. So when I presented the idea, I mean, they had more experience in this space than I did, so they could really see the value in it and the potential of it. Some of the strategies that we had didn't pan out. That was another big part of why it never took off. We were planning to integrate with web hosting companies so that when you would first install WordPress, the first thing to come up would be, choose your theme and here's some plugins you could buy to extend WordPress, right? So that didn't pan out. Web hosting companies were a bit resistant. Some of them were really interested in the beginning, and it just kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. Yeah. Another strategy, we were going to embed the WP App Store installer directly into Woo themes, and Gravity Forms as well. And unfortunately, we didn't really think that through to as well as we should have. And some people were a bit offended. They thought that it was spyware or spamware that was being injected into their WordPress because it wasn't clear where it was coming from. In retrospect, we really should have put WP App Store underneath the Woo Themes menu rather than in the top level menu. So just a kind of small thing that set people off. They're like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. So a lot of little lessons learned like that for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure all that has kind of transferred over to the Delicious Brains brand and the new product. What was that conversation like? Was it just, okay, time to pivot and move into something else? Were you already building? Well, you already had the free plugin out there, but how did that transition over to say, okay, put that on the back burner, let's focus on this?
Yeah, I mean, the sales of on WP App Store were basically non-existent. So at that point, at a certain point, I can't remember when, it was probably November last year. Like I said, we started Delicious Brains. We started development actually in the beginning of December, and we pretty much shut down development on WP App Store in November. Although we have made a few tweaks trying to revive it and trying to maybe turn it into a traditional marketplace, a more traditional marketplace. And that's still an ongoing process. But yeah, I mean, that basically at a certain point you say, okay, well, we're making no money and we're still investing in development. Something's got to give here. So let's pivot. AD asked me, what are some other things that, some other ideas that you could pivot to? And I said, well, I have this free plugin that a lot of people are passionate about. What do you think about doing a pro version of this? And he thought it was a good idea, so we gave it a shot.
Nice.
And it's panning out. So
nice. It's super important that that's a great story to the fact that maybe some people would get afraid, like I really don't know this guy, Brad. We gave him a chance. It didn't really pan out. Sorry, buddy. Runway's done.
Yeah.
But they see the potential in you, and they see the passion that you have to build a great product, and then to see a product that people are also passionate about. So that's a tremendous story that they still had faith in you, right?
Right. I think that's the key. I mean, they invested in me. They didn't invest necessarily in the idea of WP App Store. They invested in the execution of it. And I still feel like I did a pretty good job executing that idea, and that it was mostly just not the right timing. Maybe the same idea will work in 2 years' time, right? We don't know. Maybe people just weren't ready for it yet. Maybe there were a few things I could have changed, but ultimately I think I executed on it pretty well. And then with since they invested in me, after that idea and that execution didn't end up being a profitable, sustainable business, what can we do that will be, like, I'm still here. Let's build something.
Yep. That's awesome. The sustainability, and back to that, is that your biggest challenge right now as an entrepreneur, as a founder, is to look at where will this business be in a year and how can we get there? Are you kind of giving up on saying, here's the features I want, and letting your team kind of figure that out, and you're looking at the big picture? Or are you still involved with doing the feature stuff and figuring out the pricing, stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, I'm still involved in all of it. It's taking up, I'd say, most of my time day to day is working on Delicious Brains, WP Migrate DB Pro. And so, I think the big thing there is to, sorry, what was your question again?
Sorry, it was a long two-part thing. So what is your biggest challenge right now? Is it the pricing and looking at sustainability, or is it growing the product and figuring out what the next features are?
Right. I think it's both. I think sustainability is so I think it's a balance. I have to grow the product, keep growing sales, but I also have to add value to the product so that increasing my prices won't seem like a cash grab to my current customers, right? If I add value, if I save them more time, then they shouldn't have a big problem with paying a little bit extra, right? So the one thing that we're working on right now is a media files add-on for the developer edition. So you'll be able to migrate your database, but just before that happens, you can check off a box that says, I want to sync my media files between the installs as well, because a lot of people have been requesting that from us, and they think it would be a really great time saver for them if they didn't have to go to their FTP program or SSH or whatever they're using to copy those files over. And we're going to do it intelligently. We're going to decide, or we're going to determine like what's changed, like so what new files have been added, which ones are the same, let's ignore those, that kind of thing. So if you have like 5 gigs of media files, and only a few things changed, we don't have to sync the entire 5 gigs every time, right? We're just syncing the changes. So,
right. If you could wipe the slate clean on pricing, what would you relaunch with as far as price?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd probably start with the personal edition a bit higher. Probably started at $49 instead of $19, which is $30, considerably more. And I'd probably make the developer edition $150, so $149, something like that. So, and I'd probably not go unlimited. It's not really sustainable to say unlimited. I believe I have several instances of teams of developers using one license. So I think if I had limited the number of sites to a fixed number, I think I would have mitigated that problem potentially.
Yeah.
So
lessons learned from all of this over the last 8-9 months now. Would it be that you would add more value, or at least tell a better story for the personal license, so that they could see all that value for the $50? Or would it be like it's really not any of the value of the support, it's really the features that these people are looking for? How could you just add more value to bump up that price right out of the gate?
I think what you need to get over is that you're going to end up with less customers with higher prices. If you raise your prices, if you have higher prices, you're going to end up with less customers. But that's not a bad thing. You're charging more, so you can afford to have fewer customers. And your support costs, because you're supporting less people, your support costs go down, so your profitability is higher. So I think that's where people get hung up, is that they think, we're not going to have as many sales. But sales don't mean anything. It's profitability that matters. So I think I think that's the point. Like you should set your prices according to the value that you're providing, and not worry so much about how many sales you're going to get. You can't look at like the iTunes model for software like this. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's been a tremendous story, tremendous insight to what you're doing with your brand, how you're running the business. So that'll end the more formal interview. We'll hop into the last two segments. First segment, what's in your toolbox? What unique app or thing are you using day to day that people might not know about that helps you run your business?
I'd say Sublime Text. I spend a lot of time in there.
Yep.
Spend a lot of time with GitHub. I love GitHub. And I'd say those two.
Which extensions are you using in Sublime? Because I just started using it after using Coda.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of good extensions.
Yeah.
I'm actually using Sublime Text 3 at the moment, the beta. And it requires less, or I'm not using as many extensions with it because it already takes care of a few things out of the box. But I'd say probably the biggest one for WordPress development to get is the PHP Tidy or Tidy PHP. Yeah. And you just, you run this thing against a file and it just puts all your code in WordPress format. So, like spaces around parentheses and that kind of thing. So if you if you end up with a file that's like one of your old files that is not following the coding style,
that's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, then you can just hit a button and it just does the whole file for you.
Nice.
So I found that one particularly handy.
Very cool. Let's jump into the lightning round. Ask you a series of quick questions. You'll have a series of quick answers. The one plugin you cannot live without, besides your own.
Discuss.
A favorite WordPress or business book.
Blue Ocean Strategy.
A quote that you live or run your business by.
Keep going. I'm not very good at these.
What's the best business or career advice you've ever received?
That's a good question. I don't know. Pass.
What's the longest a client project has ever taken?
I think at 8 months, probably.
Not bad. Yeah. If you had to switch to another CMS, what would it be?
Probably Silver Stripe. I did quite a bit of work with Silver Stripe, and it was pretty good.
Cool. Who should I interview next?
Interview Jason Schuller, Press 75.
And what's the one question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Why do I work on so many things?
Why are you such a crazed entrepreneur like the rest of us?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. It's just in our DNA, maybe.
Are you doing anything to try to cut back on that?
It's just one of those things that you learn with time, that you get yourself into these unfortunate positions where your time is so limited, your head's going to fall off or something. I don't know. It's you just learn to stop doing that, right? The more you do it, it's just like, okay, why am I doing this? Yeah. So, I'd say, just experience.
Yeah. When I get into those zones where you're sitting down and you're thinking about all these different things, and you got your to-do list open, and like I throw like everything I know I don't want to touch for a long, long time, I put into Evernote, and I just throw it in there. Someday I'm going to go back to that. But then I have this to-do list of like, I think I might want to get to this in the next couple weeks to a month. So I put it in this other to-do list, and that one's like 75 to-dos long. And I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to go through it. I don't even want to spend the time to filter it. So it's tough. It's definitely a tough situation we put ourselves in. Yeah.
I think every entrepreneur seems to have a similar story. So I think it's just comes with the territory, maybe.
Yeah. Brad, it's been an awesome interview. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for sharing your side of the story. Where can folks find you on the web to say thanks?
bradt.ca is my website, my blog. And then you can get me on Twitter at bradt, and then deliciousbrains.com, of course.
Sweet. Yep. How far away are we from some of the new media enhancements?
We're just starting on those, and I'm not sure how long it's going to take. It's going to be some pretty good challenges that we have to tackle there. So, I'm hoping 3 months. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Christmas present for everybody.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right, Brad, thanks a lot. Everybody go check out his plugins. Check out Delicious Brains. It's awesome stuff. I've used it. We use it. It's great plugin. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's another Matt Report in the can. I hope you enjoyed that with Brad Touesnard. It's got an awesome product, has an awesome story. Go out into the web, say thanks to Brad. MattReport.com, MattReport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list one more time. If you can give me a 5-star rating on iTunes, that would be tremendous. This is Joranari by Abuday. See you next time.
De ce que tu as trahi. Alors partout où tu vas, la peur te poursuit. Dans la marée, le moment est venu. Dans la marée, le petit a grandi. Dans la marée, mais pourquoi tu t'enfuis? Non, 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 non. Dans la marée, mais pourquoi tu te caches? Oh, oh, yeah, yeah. Joranare, l'elami kodakod. Joranare, ma bandi malani mo. Joranare, mandeni kandaka. Joranare, no, 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 no. Joranare, asama banda no.